So I am sitting in front of every book so I can trick people into thinking that a raid and a US as a thank you / in honor of I'm not actually sure. Am I congratulating myself or am I like thanking you, the viewer? Well, anyway, it's a Aquanda for reaching 400,000 subscribers. And no, the eyeliner is really on brand, but I just felt like it. Die mad. And thank you for smashing that like button, smashing that subscribe boy. It's your Dick Tarantula button. By the way, before we get started, if you didn't catch it, I actually have a new series on Digital Studios channel. It's called It's It's a YouTube video essay companion piece series to opus, The Great American Read. Okay, so I asked people on Twitter come to ask me questions for a 400 kwanda. I haven't done it before because I am really lazy and forgetful. But I'm doing it this time, and the way I'm actually remembering to do it is I'm actually reading these questions for the first time. I'm sure they were very nice and respectful. Honestly, I didn't really care about the Dark Universe until they announced before The Mummy came out that they were also going to do Phantom of the Opera and Hunchback of Notre Dame. And the idea of a grim dark Hunchback of Notre Dame in the style of, like, Zack Snyder was the most amazing thing in the world to me. And I just wanted it, like burning, and I was honestly heartbroken that The Mummy tanked because I wanted Ansel Elgort as Quasimodo in Grimdark Hunchback. And don't even get me started on the Dark Universe Phantom of the Opera. You know, it would have to be modern. He's probably going to be like Stuart Townsend in Queen of the Damned Levels of Camp. Oh, so I think my hypothetical dark universe is probably better than it would have actually ended up being. Or at least more interesting. But since it only lives in my mind, there you go. I have a really easy answer for that, and that is the first two X-Men movies, which are directed by Bryan Singer and are kind of a source of consternation because he was the one who really made the subtext of the coming out narrative basically text. But he's also a gross creep. But the thing is, this has been known for a really long time. Like when I went back to finish my degree at USC, in the time since it dropped out and came back, they changed the Critical Studies department to the Bryan Singer Department of Critical Studies. They have since undone this, but the fact is that Bryan Singer has been a known creep for a really, really long time in Hollywood. What the fuck, us? For that one, I have to go with The Jungle Book. I think that the new movie kind of actually explored like why fire is bad and dangerous and why Mowgli is kind of uniquely able to wield it and why Shere Khan actually has a point. So that one I thought kind of had a raison d'etre more than just, I don't know, progressivizing the original. I thought it actually did something interesting with it. No, not really. Because I think at the end of the day, like, your feelings are your feelings, and I wish people would kind of own that. Feelings are not rational. You can rationalize them by having supporting evidence. But at the end of the day, like, if you have a criticism, it's probably because you had an emotional reaction. Finding words and supporting evidence and being able to articulate why you felt that emotional reaction is kind of the best you can do. And I think the worst people can do is have an emotional reaction and not really explore it and not really put words to it, not really articulate why they feel the way they feel. Either that or just delude themselves, which is also a really popular thing to do these days. I don't know. I think she'd honestly have a lot of fun. I think it would be really disquieting to be in the purge with her because she dare be, like, going around to, like, all the rival games and being like, ooh, the purge. Someone asked me about this earlier today. Shrek would be one because I don't like Shrek, but it is beloved by a generation. So that would be kind of tantamount to, like, Ajanaxer explaining to 90s kids why Aladdin sucks. The Prince of Egypt would be another because I really hate that movie for a lot of reasons. But then it would have to be like getting into me problems with organized religion being adapted for pop culture and everybody would lose. No one would win. I am not touching that. Touching. See, I just released a video about Disney. So that's all anyone's asking me about. Which of the Autobots is the sexiest? Well, that depends on what you re into. If you re into a bottom, there's Beachcomber. If you re into the arrogant prick type, there's Rodimus. But then I guess I'm going into the comics for that. A lot of people like Drift because he's, like, spiritual but athletic. Personally, I still gotta go with Wheeljack. Sorry, Starscream. You re not an Autobot. This is my masterpiece, Wheeljack. He's actually my favorite. He used to be transformed. He's getting dusty. What was the hardest video to put together and why? You know, at any given time, it's always the one I just released. Recently would have to be the Marxism episode of The Whole Plate. But the thing about, like, Marxism and film theory is that Marxism influences a lot of academics, but there are not that many film theorists that are like, I'm the Marxist one. So it was actually really hard. And that's why we ended up just going, yeah, just go with Adorno because it was so much. Like, just applying the Frankfurt School loan was just so much. But then you get into, like, the 60s and the 70s and then the feminists show up. It's just a really, really, really convoluted topic, and I wasn't really prepared for how convoluted it was. In my education, they didn't really teach Marxism as, like, this week we relearning about Marxism the way they did for, like, feminism and critical race theory, auteur theory. Those were a lot easier to distill in a simple way because I had been taught them in my intro class back in 2003. So, like having to distill that into an intro class type video was really, really hard. And I don't think I succeeded as well as I would have liked to, but oh. As a YouTuber, do you follow other channels as a viewer/fan? Are there any that are your favorite or you'd recommend to us? Well, actually, I probably right now watch YouTube more than anything except for RuPaul's Drag Race. But on that note, like, there were obviously a lot of people that do similar videos to what I do, like movies with Mikey, of course, ContraPoints. I binge her videos all the time still, and that's why I steal her jokes so often, sometimes with permission. Folding ideas, obviously. Patrick Williams Gray. My honest, true go-to is CakeTube. Like cake decorating YouTube. Like the two kind of obsessed with the most air how to cake it and man about cake. And, of course, everything that has ever spun off from RuPaul's Drag Race. The thing I keep watching over and over again lately is starring Trixie Mattel and Katja. It ended like well over a year ago, but I only just discovered it, so it's new to me. Oh, and Jenny Nicholson too. I guess. Here's an easy one. Is it truly possible for sexual violence to be depicted well on film? Well, that's the easy questions for a YouTube Equanda. Well, Here's the thing, Chris. A lot of this is gonna be, at the end of the day, subjective. And I think the problem with a lot of film criticism is that people kind of expect there to be, like, a moral barometer, when, at the end of the day, it's like there are things like context. Who is writing the thing? What is it on Hapo? Personally, I think in isolation, there can be arguments to be made, but overall, the broader trend tends to dramatize pain in a way that I think is cliché. So, I think it's really hard to separate isolated depictions of sexual violence with, like, the broader trend. And the other thing is, like, that's changing constantly. So, what's like maybe this year be like that was tasteful. 10 years from now will be like unacceptable. So, that's honestly, basically kind of an impossible question to answer. Personally, I think it's overdone and not done well enough often to really justify it as a common enough dramatic device as it is, especially in the golden age of television, which we are apparently living through. Have you copyrighted Thanks I Hate It yet? No. That's like a phrase. There's even a really big Facebook group called Thanks I Hate It. Which Starscream is best? Cool. Well, we've already been through this. While I am, of course, always deeply partial to the original Chris Latta, I think me personal favorite Starscream is Transformers Prime, Alliance Continuity. And, oh, what's his name? Oh, what? Oh God, I've met him. I can't remember his name. The guy who, okay, Transformers Prime Starscream. His name escapes me. I think it's a Steve. Are there any essays you'd like to redo/update? All of them. When people come up to me and say, like, oh my God, you said this thing, like about half the time, I have no idea what they re-talking about, because the second I'm done with a thing, I very rarely watch it again. Every time I watch something, I'm like, God, I should have done this. I should have praised this better. Oh, I am repeating words. I hated this edit. There's a dropped frame. There's a dropped clip. My makeup's terrible. Oh my God, that lighting. I look like a glowworm. Really, basically anything I did before I departed the channel that shall not be named. Except for the Freddy Got Fingered review. That one I'm still pretty proud of. It's my legacy. If you can go back to your 18-year-old you, what would your advice be? Don't ever mix Xanax and alcohol. I noticed you seem to go to Disney parks a lot. Super cool. What's your favorite attraction and why? Honestly, it's the goddamn Guardians of the Galaxy. Mission Breakout. Fight me. But now it might not be because it's always going to make me sad because of this dumb James Gunn thing. Hashtag rehire James Gunn. What are all those books behind you? I went after Disney War after you cited it in an earlier video and loved it. So if you have other book recommendations, it would really make me happy. Since he shot this not that long ago, I haven't moved the book since he shot the Beauty and the Beast video. This is, of course, Disney War. As you can see, it's really long. It is the truth that with Audible, I actually did listen to this one on Audible because I have a really hard time with nonfiction that's this long. So it's better if I just listen to it over the course of like 3 months. And Absolutely Remarkable Things by Hank Green. It's out September 5th. And I just got this in the mail like 2 days ago, so I haven't read it yet. Sorry, Hank. It's funny that I'm shilling for Audible. This is not a sponsored video, but this was another Audible. One of my favorite nonfiction books of all time, The Power Broker by Robert A. Caro. Robert Moses and the Rise and Fall of New York. I have the hard copy because I need it, because the hard copy has like all these cool maps and stuff in it. If I really like a book on Audible, I'll buy the hard copy just so I can have it for research purposes. And that's why I have a hard copy of Disney War. Here was a formative book. Deconstructing Disney. This one's actually from college. I mean, it's basic, but there's some of it that's also dumb as hell. There's like an entire chapter about how Hercules is a parable of the Clinton administration. Hercules, as an inscription of Clinton, is the victim of a massive right-wing conspiracy. Hades, god of the underworld, is planning a hostile takeover bid, and is told by the fates that, should Hercules fight, you will fail. The conspiracy narrative favored by the more distraught Democrats during Clinton's impeachment process was that Kenneth Starr's politically motivated prosecution was also underpinned by the tobacco industry. See, Hades smokes a cigar. See, this book was honestly where I realized that academics could be utterly full of shit. This is me favorite book by Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower. Here, of course, is Awoken by Sarah Ellenson, the most important book ever written. The Girl with All the Gifts. I didn't actually see the movie, but I really loved this book. Stephen King's on writing, also very good. I am just going by what's convenient over here. I have other books on other bookshelves, but that would mean I'd have to get up. Is there a movie that genuinely surprised you, be it an expectations twist or what you believe it would be before you actually watched it? The first movie that genuinely surprised me was Barry Sonnenfeld's Men in Black, 1997. 19 the science bad Harry do you Zealand the sound I thought it was gonna suck, but it changed my life because I loved it so much. But another recent one would be Mad Max Fury Road, but I think that one just surprised everybody. Where does your sharp fascination with exploring Disney come from? Honestly, it probably comes from the fact that the very first film studies class I ever took was about Disney, and therefore it's just kind of hardwired into me brain that Disney equals a thing to be constructed, which is funny because I was just throwing shade at deconstructing Disney over here. But also honestly just because Disney was really important to me growing up, and the older I get, the more still emotionally involved I am. And also, living in California now, I just spend a lot of goddamn time at the parks, and going to Disney World is like the thing I look forward to every year. Why do all of your Elon Musk memes make me feel cursed? Probably because they are Jesse. The worst Disney sequel, in your opinion. Well, I've actually done a video on that, but since I don't watch me old stuff I can't remember what I said. I am pretty sure it was either Beauty and the Beast, Belle's Enchanted Christmas, or Beauty and the Beast, Belle's Magical World. I know that all the comments are going to be telling me what I said. What are your feelings on the slew of 80s, 90s, 2000s nostalgia reboots in recent years? I mean, it sucks because it's like kind of gone from it being a trend to it being like all there is, especially with Disney. But at the same time, it's nothing new, and at least it's sometimes there's like a quality thing that comes off it, so I don't know. What are some of your cancelled video projects, assuming you have some, and why haven't they seen the light of day? Most of the ones that I started but gave up on would be dated, like, or they're already way too much off this hot take. I think really early on I was going to do something about why girls love Twilight, not realizing that there were a million of those already by 2009. There was another one about 50 Shades of Grey in the male gaze, and does the female gaze exist? And I ceased that one because I was so sick of hearing about 50 Shades of Grey. I got a lot of comments for like, do something about gender in Game of Thrones, so we started that, and then I hated it and killed it. So it's mostly stuff that's just like not interesting enough to warrant existing, at least in my mind. Will you hire him? No, sorry. What do you think of Hank's book? Well, I think this thing is pretty cool that they did with it. I don't know what it means because I haven't read it yet. I just got it in the mail like yesterday. Who is sexier, Starscream or Daddy? Well, which Daddy? There are like 8 of those now. Starscream. Starscream. Thickest animated Daddy, and why is it Radigan? See, I wouldn't categorize Radigan as Daddy. See, I know it's like once you have to explain the joke, it's not funny. But this was obviously the daddy thing, was something coined by ContraPoints in her video about Jordan Peterson. Sometimes boys just need a daddy, and sometimes girls do too. Honestly, Elon Musk talking about the authorial intent of sci-fi authors on Twitter is just like daddy. So Jordan. Sorry, Dr. Peterson. Professor. Daddy. So really it's a very specific thing for an unificative arrogance, and I think Radigan is deservedly arrogant. When is a plot hole worth pointing out, and when should it be ignored in favor of suspending disbelief? Well, I think I hate the term plot hole now because the internet's killed it. But in general, to me, it's a question of, is this bad writing? Is it lazy writing? Is it contrived? Which is why I try not to use the word plot hole. To me, I'm just like, well, it's contrived. They obviously needed to get to an end point and just kind of wrote in something late lazily to get us there. Over the course of your career, what's been the biggest change in how you perceive frame and critic media? When I first started, we didn't really have the meta text of how the internet was going to popularize the discourse. And I know this sounds snobbish, but like back in the day, the people who had a platform to talk in a film critic way were people who, like journalists, people who are educated. And now just anyone can do it. The problem with that is, of course, capitalism. People fall into ruts, and you have these clickbait channels like movienitpicks.com that just kind of do the same thing over and over. And because they have to rush out content, they end up having these really shallow observations that huge audiences just kind of see and regurgitate. And that's kind of where film literacy begins and ends with a lot of people. And I think in some part contributed to that, if in a very small way, by being a part of these like nitpicky channels that we shall not name here. I think now it's more about like being careful about shaping trends, because I know I'm by no means anywhere near the biggest voice on film YouTube, but being expected to say and do the same thing over and over leads to a bad film criticism. You mentioned being a fan of ContraPoints before befriending her. How did you stumble upon her videos and which was the first you saw? The first I saw, and she will tell you not to watch it, was her video about the Golden One. It was called What is an Alpha? Or something about being alphas, and I think I just recommendations filtered that one to me. And I think something filtered recommended if they, God forbid, gave the great mouse detective a live-action remake. No. No. I'm gonna stop you right there. No. No. Mom. Will video essays ever reserve the same standard as printed essays? Probably not anytime soon. Having spent some time in the hallowed halls of academia in the last couple years, most academics don't actually know what a video essay is. I think we have to get to a stage where like your average film professor knows what a video essay is before we even start talking about how to get them peer-reviewed. How do you feel about Relo? It's fine. How do you approach your research? Basically the way you research any essay. Although for me it helps to have a knowledge base in the topic at hand just because then I'm more interested in it and more confident. Outside of Phantom, which musicals do you like best? How do you think would last longer in the Hunger Games? Your Shadow Todd. And how long would that person last, or would they win? He'd be the first to go because he'd be looking at his phone the whole time. Why are you putting Elon Musk erotica in me feed? I don't know. Jason. Why are you reading it? What's your favorite lipstick? Well, Sarah, I'm actually wearing it. Oh, it's called Man Eater by Smashbox. Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy? Jeopardy. Culture and media changes. How do you think we should view media from the past? How do you think our society can reconcile past media, especially as it relates to marginalized groups, with our present selves? Do we analyze or do we ignore? I honestly think that Disney had the best idea and the rightest idea whenever they did their release of wartime cartoons, because basically they released them as they are in their entirety, stuff like Defer Space and Education for Death, propaganda films that Disney produced during the war, and all of these had nice little introductions by Leonard Maltin contextualizing, and obviously they were very corporate and on brand, but I think that this is the right idea. And I think that moralizing these things, like it's some racist guy who lives down the street in 2018, is just, well, it's not very helpful. Because obviously erasing your past is not going to help us learn anything or grow from it. So even putting things in a context like that is important. But honestly, I would just like to see more people compartmentalizing. Because it's not the same thing as if you have someone like a celebrity, I don't know, let's say someone like James Woods who says really evil things on the regular, who is still alive and still has a platform and still has a position of power and uses his position of power to do awful things. Or compare that to like a movie like Song of the South, which was made in the 1940s. I really think Disney is wasting an opportunity not releasing that and, like, contextualizing it and talking about how, like, why it was the way it was, how cultures changed over the year, why they thought that this was progressive, which they did. Maybe donate a portion of profits to the NAPE or something. I think there is too much shame around media history, and I think contextualizing it is what's much more beneficial than saying, like, oh, it's evil and it needs to go away and be brushed under the rug forever. How did the Transformers video come about? Like, what made the idea pop? This was actually something Dan Olson and I developed as a concept, like, back in 2013, 2014. That's something as science tendency by the or you we made a really, really long Google Doc about Michaela, and from there it just sprung like, well, this would be a great way to talk about feminist theory. This would be a great way to talk about all sorts of film theory. But Dan is kind of hard to get a hold of, so we just decided to do it myself. If you could wave a magic wand and make one trope/stock character/plot device disappear forever, what would it be? I think my least favorite trope of all time is like the one where, like the while you were sleeping I'm lying about me identity trope, because it always ends at the end of Act 2 with, the Fern Gully. You lied to 'em. I hate that. I hate it. What's a topic you dying to make a video about but probably never will? SpaceX. Will we ever get a full tour of the daddy wall? Well, I am nowhere near close to tired of that joke. So probably. How did you originally imagine you'd use your degrees? Like, what area of film did you want to do? Also, what's your favorite city that you've lived in? New York, but the New York of a few years ago? Like, the proliferation of Uber and the degradation of the trains have made this city basically fucking unlivable. To the question of how we originally imagined using me degrees, I don't know. I mean, do people in college actually think that far ahead? You read just like, look, I got it. I have a degree, so now I'm gonna work minimum wage until I die while I write a lot of fanfiction. I was not ambitious. Favorite line/song Howard Ashman ever wrote. I'm especially good at expectorating. What are the risks and advantages of being an individual figurehead for your videos when they are often, pretty much always except for this one, the production of a talented group of people? And are there particular benefits to that kind of setup on YouTube as a platform? Yeah, and honestly, I don't know what to do with it. A very small sect of people kind of understand, like my editor, Angelina, like her style and how it is distinct from my editing style. So I definitely get comments that are like, oh, that's a really good edit by Angelina, and like, yes, correct, that was her. But most people still have this idea that it's all me, and it's not. I will get credit for things like I didn't to write or didn't do, but on the other hand, I get to take all the heat. So I don't know. I think the people who work for me right now are more comfortable with me having the bigger profile, because then they don't have to deal with all the bullshit I do. What do you think about the Disney acquisition, Hunter? I think it's bad. There's nothing good about it. Is there anyone you would like to collab with who you haven't yet? And if so, who? Again, like, I tend to restrict myself to people I've actually met just because I think it's kind of creepy to be like, oh, I'd love to collab with Poppy. Maybe Gray. I don't know what we would do. I think also I'd like to just do more stuff with non-YouTubers, like people who aren't strictly on this platform, or maybe some of me former classmates at USC who are, like, actually in the industry. Like, The video I added last year with David McCracken talking about filmmaking was fun, and I'd like to do more stuff like that. Like, I think John Scalzi would be fun to do some video with. Like, he's a good sport, and he has, like, a good presence. Okay, one more. If James Gunn is not rehired for Guardians 3, would you support and promote a total boycott of the movie? No. Like, here's the thing. Boycotts don't work. Like, there are actual studies on this. Or rather, specifically, boycotts alone won't work. Like, let's look at the recent Amazon Prime Day. People were promoting a boycott of Amazon, and it was their biggest day ever. Like, the truth is most people don't care about disrupting their normal cycles, and if they re-gonna see Guardians 3, they re-gonna see Guardians 3, including me. What does work is making a big stink and making it clear why you are remaking a big stink, which is why I support the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think the whole James Gunn getting fired thing is bullshit. But I think boycotting a movie that's not gonna come out for another 3 years, that's gonna make such a non-existent dent that no one will notice. And but kind of ignores the problem, which is not the movie of wait, wait, by what by light that is so the you the save the go away it's what's going on now. So no, I wouldn't to support that, but I will make a bigger stink in the meantime. Thanks for sitting all the way through this, and thanks to everyone who stuck with me up to 400,000. We did it. Oh, I have one more announcement. And I have one more announcement. If you wondering, oh, whoa, your nostalgic chick videos have mostly disappeared. Yeah, about that. Basically, I want to consider this channel a new era, and anything that is affiliated with certain former affiliates. Oh, I don't really want on this channel. That said, I know if I just delete it, people are just gonna upload it and monetize me content, and you know we can't have that. I started a new channel, and we're going to be uploading a new video every day, and I won't have the comments turned off. Go wild. I don't care. Of course, I'm not thrilled about this, because I'm basically hideously ashamed of pretty much everything I did before 2015. Because I have the says I really I have you I have you feel the way I view But it's the internet. Nothing D's. So go watch my horrible old content, and feel free to tell me how problematic I am. You re not wrong. I wish I could end this on a more positive note. Enjoy.